Hello there, YouTubers, and welcome to the final episode of Wet Liberal Whenever for 2009. Here's my prediction for next year. Okay, I've only got one. It's very simple. I think not many people are going to call next year 2010, and I'd really like them to. If we go back 100 years, do you think that 100 years ago people were going, next year in 1910? No, they weren't. They were calling it 1910. 1910. So next year is 2010. We've done the 2001, 2002, all that stuff. It's been so annoying. It's so much longer. 22, 23, but it doesn't really work with the low numbers. From now on, we can call it 2010. That's my wet liberal rant for next year. Now, facial hair, interesting. I've grown a beard. You know, I do it. I'm very lazy about shaving. And two women I know, one is 14, so she's really a girl, and her mum, both thought I looked rather elegant and distinguished with my beard. They're the only people. Everyone else said I look like a tramp, which isn't a very nice thing to say. So today, as part of my end of year celebration, I'm going to slowly remove it. Okay, so there's the first bit of it gone. You know, it doesn't make it's no big deal, is it? Because it grows back. I've been thinking about beards though, because in the 1970s, which is a long, long time ago, when I was a young man, it was very much the thing. There was a lot of heavily bearded, very long-haired men around. My wife definitely doesn't like me having a beard. She'd much prefer, I think she'd prefer me to be clean-shaven with a mullet haircut. It's to do with her Australian background, you know, she can't help it. One shouldn't judge her on those criteria, but, you know, she always likes it when my hair's longer at the back. You know, in a mullet. Very 1970s. That's when we grew up. You know, we are children of the 1970s, and that's basically, you know, all the role models I had as a young man were men with enormous beards and enormous amounts of hair. That was the very common thing, and all the women I knew at that time, there weren't that many, let's be honest, but all the women I knew had enormous amounts of pubic hair. It's hard to believe now that women can produce that volume of pubic hair, but that is the way they were. Nobody shaved or waxed themselves in those days. All the women I grew up with had hairy armpits. That's fine. It's not that shocking. It is weird, isn't it, now? We're so depilated, or whatever that stupid word is, you know, everyone's depilated to the max. And there is something slightly disturbing about that, because, you know, when you grow up and you become a mature adult human being, you grow hair in places, but not anymore, because it's all shaved off and waxed off and we all look like children. Isn't that slightly worrying? I think there's some questions we could ask about that, and I'd like to hear your comments. On hairy women, I dread to think what they're going to be like. So that's the beginning of my beard. It's quite a nice feeling, having your face back, because you don't, you know, you go through this, for people who can't grow beards, young men and women, you go through a very itchy phase with your beard, and then it stops itching and it's really warm, and when you go out on a cold day it keeps you warm. It's nice. So you know, there's a lot of advantages to them, but there could be those theories that men sometimes hide behind a beard. Very shy men often will grow big thick beards, and then you can you feel protected by it in some way. I think that's as much as I can possibly milk out of beards. Let's take some more off. And now we have the classic goatee beard. I wore my beard like this for quite a few years on Scrap Heap Challenge. I think it was a time when goatee beards were probably a little bit out of fashion, because I would have been 2 or 3 years late. But there were a lot of goatees around, and they're quite annoying, aren't they, really? A goatee, I mean, you know, either grow a beard or don't bother. The sort of, I think the less facial hair you have, the more annoying it is, isn't it, really, as it goes. Let's try and reduce the facial hair somewhat more and see how bad it can look. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. I'm sorry, I don't know how boring this is going to be to watch, but it's actually quite good fun to make. That is a bad look. Very popular amongst footballers in the 1970s, and interestingly, some soldiers to this day. They love having a tash, soldiers do. Big squaddies, big butch blokes in the army, and let's face it, with what they're doing at the moment, they can grow as many moustaches as they like. I have absolute respect for them, but it is an interesting little observation, the amount of tashes that are prevalent in the armed forces. RAF particularly. My father was in the RAF. He was a bomber pilot in World War II, and he had a big handlebar moustache like that, and he kept it really until the very last couple of years of his life, and he still had a moustache The last thing I did with my dad before he died was trim his tash, because he couldn't really do it. Had to get the nail scissors and just trim it along the bottom. Didn't do a very good job. He wasn't impressed when he looked in the mirror, because he was a very neat man. Slightly sloppy, arty son. Finally is the toothbrush moustache, which, as we all know, was very popular in the 1940s in a particular European country. We do not need to speak about the specifics. Toothbrush moustache. What a bizarre, bizarre thing to do. Interestingly, two men that I've been aware of in my life, one only on film, obviously Adolf Hitler, but the other one was a teacher at my grammar school back in, I suppose, the late 60s, called Mr. Clark, Nobby Clark, a brutal, vindictive, psychopathic headmaster of discipline. Imagine that. Beat the living daylights out of us, not with a cane, because that was too thin, a bloody great big stick. And he had a toothbrush moustache, and he had coruscatingly bad breath. Very shiny shoes, very neat, tidy clothes. You know, you could cut your finger on the creases in his trousers. They were ludicrous. His trousers were slightly too short. That's a very bad look in a man, isn't it? Where they were just fractionally, like half an inch too short, so they didn't look right. Very shiny kind of army boot style shoes, and a toothbrush moustache, greased down hair. And he was supposedly, I guess, a role model for the boys. Well, there we go, ladies and gentlemen, freshly shaved for 2010. Notice how I said that, 2010, not 2010. 2010, next year, very exciting year. I've got some big projects lined up that I'm going to be doing. Basically, I'm going to be launching a new series called Gearless. Now, this has been something I've been trying to do for, I think, about 3 years now. It's a niche program. It's going to be a niche program. We're going to try and bring one out every 2 weeks, exploring the reality of driving electric vehicles, how it would really impact upon our lives, what would really happen to the world if we didn't use petrol anymore. All those questions. It's only going to be of interest to people who are interested in that subject, so it's not a broad appeal show like Carpool, it's a niche show. I've been given a really nice electric car for a year, which is the fantastic sort of test bed to try it out. Been using it every day, I've driven it twice today. It is an amazing thing, so it is quite interesting to be able to test it out for real. What happens if your batteries run out on the motorway? Is the most common question I get asked. Isn't it weird? That is the first one. Always, always, always. Not like what happens if your batteries run out on a really dark, narrow lane in the countryside at night where there's no houses anywhere near. You know, that would be quite bad. Run out on the motorway, the AA bloke comes and recharges it. Or does he? We don't know. So that's what I'm going to be doing next year. Carpool will continue. The first episode of Carpool goes out on Friday, January the 8th, featuring none other than Sir Patrick Stewart. Yes, ladies and gentlemen. So please don't miss that particular Carpool. Carpool will continue, some brilliant guests lined up, some really famous ones, some that you've all heard of, some that you've never heard of but are really interesting. So please keep watching it. Wet Liberal Wheneverers, Happy New Year. Here's to a very successful 2010, and if you have been, thank you for watching.